Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Let's just wait a couple of seconds for everybody to join and make sure we can be heard, we can be seen. Hi, Jane from Northern California. Hi, says Judy. Awesome. And then we've got a couple of, a question already in the YouTube site. We're definitely excited. I can feel the enthusiasm. We're streaming this both live on YouTube and on our website, so let's just wait for a couple of minutes for everybody to chime in. Hello, says Linda. Hi, Jean, from Brooklyn, New York. Hi, Judy says hi, Cassy.
Hi, Judy.
Awesome. All right. And while we're waiting for those who are new with Etcher, we are an art learning platform who works with teachers from all across from all across the globe, like Cassy. And we're going to be, we have our own website where we think of it as an art Netflix. So you can subscribe to different plans. So just check it out on etcherstudio.com. Hi from sunny England, and Jane. Valerie says hi from London. Bev says hi, Cassy.
Hi, Bev.
Awesome. Alrighty, I think that's pretty much everyone. We can begin. So good morning again, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. My name is Kathleen, and I'll be your host for today's first class for the course Introduction to Acrylics with Cassy from at Cassydraws.art. And this class we'll talk about, Cassy will talk about further later on. We'll give you an introduction to acrylic supplies and color mixing. So make sure you grab your materials right there. For the newcomers, by the way, this class is part of a 7-week course with 4 classes. Each class, we're going to be delving deeper into different basics of acrylics, and we're going to be topping that off or closing that with a live feedback session at the end where you get the opportunity to share your work, and Cassy will be giving you the gift of feedback, the best gift of all.
Very important.
Of course. If you're not part of that group yet, but you have purchased this course, make sure you are part of the Facebook group because so that you won't miss out on the fun. That's pretty much it. We've got announcements there, and if you're not part of if you want to be part of the main Facebook group, I'm dropping that link as well here in the chat. And before we begin, I know you guys are pretty much excited for Cassy to talk about her stuff. Just a few housekeeping. If you have questions, just type them in the chat. I'm going to be directing them to Cassy, but also Cassy can also read your questions. And if you don't have the materials just yet, I am dropping the link to our class PDF or course PDF, which has everything you need. Everything Cassy used here, the materials, it's listed in that class PDF, including the feedback survey, which you can answer later on. And we can have a couple of pauses or checkpoints to make sure everybody's doing good. So just let us know, and Cassy will be helping you with that. And with that said, without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor to Cassy so that she can talk about, or introduce herself first, talk about the course, and get us started with the first class. So, Cassy?
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone. I am so excited to be here. And my name is Cassie. For those of you I've not met yet, hello. Cassydraws is my official name, I guess we'll say. But I'm a professional fine artist. I do a lot of animal paintings, landscapes, anything nature related. That is totally my jam. So I've been painting for a while now, and I'm just so excited to be here and introduce acrylic to you all. So the course with Etcher is going to be all about acrylics. So we are going to start today as an example. At the very beginning, we are going to start with our brushes, all about our paints, like how they mix together, how we can create all these beautiful colors, dive into our color theory with a little bit of application, and then I do have some homework for you. And this will basically be the entire setup throughout. Each class, we are going to dive into a new topic or theme. I will help you through this every step of the way. So please ask or answer any questions. I will do my best to do so. And yeah, we'll have some homework at the end. We'll just work through it all together and have a good time. So I'm ready. I'm just chomping at the bit to get started. And I hope you guys are too. So yes, no reference photos today. Everything is going to be on the live. So I'm excited. I'm ready. Thank you guys for being here.
Awesome. I think everybody's pretty quiet in the chat, both on the website and YouTube. I think you guys are grabbing your stuff, but
prepping.
I learned that the hard way. I won't be pushing you guys, but I think we can begin.
Awesome.
All right, I will pan over here and oops, sorry. My bad. Okay, let me
little begin. Sneak preview there.
There we go. And awesome.
Awesome. So hello and welcome to our first class today. Again, my name is Cassy. I will be your teacher for these next 4 classes, and I am so excited to have you here. I know acrylic is very new to Etcher, so thank you so much for giving it a chance and coming on in and just having some fun today. So what I want to do is, and again, I'm going to do my best to work through this here. I'm usually working live, so this is very different for me, but I want to go through our class agenda. So today we're going to be introducing our acrylics, our paint, our brushes, our canvas, starting at the very beginning. And then we're going to follow up with some color mixing and color theory. So we are doing a little bit of work today. So what is so great about acrylic? First of all, the most important thing is it is a very versatile medium. So acrylic is water-based, which means that it is easily cleaned up with soap and water off of a lot of surfaces. We're going to talk about clothes in a minute, but it is a very versatile, forgiving medium that has very quick dry times. There are 2 options of acrylic. We have our professional grade and our student grade. Our professional grade acrylic has much fewer additives in the paint itself. So this is going to be a very pure color, a very pure, bright, vibrant mixing acrylic. These essentially are your Mercedes of acrylics, the best you can buy, which means they are in turn a little bit more expensive. And you can see here, there are many different options, tubes, jars. We have the large bucket of what would be titanium white or usually Mars black, and very different options available for you, different brands and styles. Now, what I'm using today is going to be the student grade acrylic. So the brand I'm using is Grumbacher Academy Acrylic. And you can see those here. They come in 2 sizes, the large tube or the smaller tube as well. These are much more affordable, so they are going to have a lot more additives or extenders in them, which means the paint is not going to be as clear or as bright. The plus side is they're usually available in kits or available in singles at a much more affordable price. So if you are getting started with acrylics and you're on a budget, this is going to be the product that I recommend to you. However, as a professional artist, I'm using these Academy acrylics. So a lot of people get nervous and say, well, they must not be very good. I'm using Academy acrylics. I sell my artwork. I make commissions all over the world, and I am using this paint and have been very, very happy with it. So just keep that in mind. You don't need to break the bank when you are first starting out. We have the metal tube on the right, which is going to be the 90 mil. And then we have the plastic style tube on the left, which I believe is 75. So there's a bunch of different options there for you. Just use what works best for you. Now we have different types of acrylic. We have our heavy body, soft body, and then 3 options down below of the forms that acrylic will come in. So the first one I want to discuss is our heavy body. Now, the heavy body paint is much more textured. You can see here that there is a lot of texture in this painting, just as a sample. So there's a lot of ridges and bumps and texture, just really, really beautiful paint. And this is going to be excellent for large canvases, easel paintings, etc. Excuse me, etc. Just really great, fantastic quality. But a lot of artists might not like the thickness of it. The flip side is going to be the soft body, and this is going to be the Grumbacher Academy acrylic, this brand here that I'm using. It is a soft body acrylic, and you can see here it is very smooth, very sort of thin in a sense, and just for me works excellent for fine detail work, smaller paintings, etc. We have our airbrush form, which is going to be a little less popular in my opinion. Great for background works, but not a lot of people have the space. Gouache is actually a style you can get in acryl gouache, which for those of you who are on Etcher will know that Etcher offers gouache and acrylic courses as well. So gouache is a style of acrylic. And then we have our marker variants. Now, these ones are very interesting, something new to my art kit that I have not used for a long time, so I'm still learning. But these are the One for All acrylic pump markers. Now, these come available in multiple different nibs, and these are going to be round, pointed, you can get chisel. There's so many different options and a lot of cool applications for them. So a lot of artists will use them to sign their work rather than a paintbrush. Take it from me, signing your name with a paintbrush can be awful. I like to use these to sign my work, to do calligraphy, typography. There are so many different applications for them, so give them a try. Now let's talk dry time. Everyone hears acrylic and panics about the dry time. It dries very quickly on your canvas and your palette, and this can be a huge adjustment for people who use other mediums like watercolor. Watercolor usually dries very slowly, and you have a much more lengthy process time, whereas acrylic is very, very quick. And although this can sound scary, this actually is a positive for us. So once you get used to that dry time, you're able to work more, work faster, and be more productive. Those layers of paint are going to dry very, very quickly, allowing you to get more done in your painting session. So although it can be a con at first when you're new and you're going, oh my gosh, Cassie, my palette has dried already, what do I do? It will turn into a positive. And in a segue, acrylic is here to help us. It is one of the most easy mediums to fix your mistakes. So I mentioned in the beginning, very forgiving, very versatile, and this is why. Because it dries fast, you can easily cover over problem areas. So let's say you've made a portrait, you accidentally put the nose in the wrong place, maybe it's a little too long. You can go ahead, cover over that completely, and just restart. So it's fantastic. Now, cleanup with acrylic, soap and water on most surfaces. So for example, your desk, maybe you accidentally hit your water cup. You can just wash that off usually with soap and water and it will come clean. However, acrylic is very difficult to get out of clothing. So it will adhere to your clothes. And once it's in the dryer, it's pretty much stuck on forever. So I recommend using some sort of apron or smock or an old style t-shirt. I know we're moving quick here, but it'll it'll all make sense once we start working on it, trust me. So I want to talk a little bit about brush anatomy. This is very important as we're going to talk about brush care. I want to make sure we understand the brush and the important areas. So here's a little diagram I thought would be helpful. So of course we have our handle, which is our most basic part of the paintbrush. The important part I want to highlight is the ferrule. So the ferrule is the metal part of the paintbrush that holds the brush bristles and the handle together. This is essentially the little mediator between the two. And the crimp is the area where the machine or the manufacturer has actually adhered the ferrule to the handle by pressing the metal together with a little bit of glue or adhesive. And that is going to be an area we're going to talk about in our brush care. We want to make sure this stays dry at all times, and I'll tell you why in a few moments. Next, we have the heel, the belly, and the toe, which are your brush bristle anatomy of the brush itself. And these, of course, the heel we're going to talk about as well, gets a lot of paint in there. And then, of course, the other areas are going to be the actual parts that are painting your painting. I see we've paused here. Are we doing okay?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that you're able to like catch up with the thoughts. I was
Oh my gosh, I talk a lot. Everyone, I talk a
no
lot.
worries.
I'm trying to give you all the information I can. So thank you for pausing. Thank you. Hopefully everyone is doing okay. I know, again, we're moving quite quickly. This part, again, is just a little introduction. We're going to get to the application part towards the end of the live today, but just bear with me, I promise. So
Yeah,
here's a live example of our brush. The Grumbacher Golden Edge is this brush that I'm using here. And I think we can go ahead. We'll kind of take a look at the brush in real time. Perfect. Thank you so much. There is the handle, the crimp that I was talking about, and then the brush bristles. And what we want to do is when we are painting, we want to make sure that no water or paint extends beyond this area. And the reason being is if we get this area of your paintbrush wet, now this works for any paintbrush either, whether you're using gouache, watercolor, whatnot, all of them. If you get water in this area, this will eventually wear away the glue that the manufacturer put into this area to keep the brush together. And this is where you'll start to see the brush pop off. That entire section can be removed from the handle. And usually the handles aren't too long in that area. So again, you'll have a broken paintbrush before you know it. So just keep that in mind. Let's talk about long handle versus short handle. So long handle brushes are great for working on an easel. So if you do plan on working on an easel, standing, these are going to be your paintbrushes. Very expressive brush strokes, big movement, and gestural painting. So a lot easier on your shoulder and your arm. You're working a little bit away from the canvas, so a little bit of practice there, but just an option for you in your art kit. Now we also have what I have here is our short handle brushes. Now I only use short handle. These are my favorites. They are perfect for working with fine details. Smaller scale work, so on a smaller canvas, as we can work much closer to the subject and the canvas. It's essentially a shorter distance. And this to me works perfectly. I've tried long and short. For me, if you're used to short handle with your other mediums or you're just starting out, for me, I would recommend a short handle kit. Just my opinion and something that I've practiced. Now, the type of brush bristles themselves, there are two different options that you can buy. Each will be varying in price and of purpose. So we have our synthetic variants, which are more resilient. These are like this brush here, made of manufactured material. So these are going to be very pliable, very bendy, and very forgiving. I personally like the synthetic. They are also less expensive, and more starter kits come with synthetics rather than natural hair. So just keep that in mind. The natural versions are going to be natural hair. So my watercolorists in chat may remember or recognize squirrel hair or rabbit hair or all these other different types of hair in their watercolor brush. The same is available for acrylic. These are soft or stiff. You can get hog hair, horse hair. Those are going to be excellent for very textured paintings, but they do not retain their shape as easily. So just keep that in mind. Two different variations to choose from. And I do recommend that you just practice and experiment with what works best for you. In terms of shape, the most popular shape we have for acrylic painters tends to be the round brush. The round brush is formed to a tip, comes in many different shapes and sizes, and really is just the most universal size or type of brush. There's a larger one for you as an example. As this brush gets bigger, so do all of those brush bristles. Perfect, excellent starter brush. Next, we're going to use and talk about our filbert. This, for me, works excellent for wildlife paintings and landscape paintings. They have a very large sweeping brushstroke. We're going to talk about that in class 2 of how it actually looks applying the paint. But for me, just an excellent shape and size, excellent brush. Definitely recommend it for your kit. Third, we have a liner brush. These work perfectly for your long wispy hairs. So whether it's on a person, long sweeping hairs, whiskers on a cat, maybe some little birds in the sky, very fine details, very thin stroke. Number four, we have our blender brush. Blenders, we talked about this in our demo earlier for this course, and these work perfectly for smashing that paint around. Clouds, foggy areas, blending, all of those really work well with our blender brush. Now, something that's important that's going to save you a lot of money is brush care. How do we clean our brushes after our session? You're going to want to use mild dish soap and water. This is the cheapest alternative that you can use. You're going to swish this brush around in some soap, rinse, and repeat until clean. Very, very simple. Just remember not to get water past that ferrule. We want to make sure that stays dry at all times. Now, you can use cleaner depending on if you like acrylic. If you do, you fall in love with it, you can invest in a brush cleaner. This works perfect for acrylic and oil painters. The same steps apply. We're going to wet our brush, swirl around in the brush cleaner, and going to get that up into those bristles. It's almost like conditioner for us, for people. And this is going to keep your brush clean, and it actually puts a protective coating on these bristles to help keep your brush new and looking real shiny and just perfect. Now, a little bonus item that I added to this segment is this little scrubber. It kind of reminds me of a scrub daddy for dishes. And this is just going to have these little tiny prongs on there that are going to actually get inside your brush bristle and really help keep this brush clean. So up into that top area of the brush is very difficult to get at. So those little prongs help get up into that brush and help keep it clean. So I bought mine, I think, for honestly $3 on sale. Not very expensive at all, but has really helped me keep my brushes clean and has really saved me a lot of money. Great, great investment, in my opinion. So the steps to proper cleaning, to reiterate, you're going to rinse your paint off your brush at the end of your session. So you want to rinse that entirely. Try to get as much off as you can first, and then we're going to go ahead and add in that soap. So your soap or your cleaner, run that through your brush, rinse, and we're going to reshape. So what I'm doing here is I'm actually holding the brush bristles, squeezing the water from those bristles, and reshaping my brush. This is going to ensure that the brush dries properly and that it retains its shape. And that is going to be the part that really saved me a lot of money. With that, see, I'm just making this little motion, squeezing that water out, bringing that round brush to a point once more. And then that is pretty much the end of your proper cleaning session, if you will. Now, to dry them, I like to leave my paintbrushes on paper towel. I find that it tends to soak up the excess water. I really do enjoy just letting them lay flat. However, you can get stands that you put on your desk or wherever you're cleaning your brush, where the brush will hang upside down and the water will drain from it into a little container. So many different ways to dry your brushes. I just always say don't have the brushes up, keep them facing down. Now we've talked about brushes. Let's talk about our canvas options, or what we can paint on with acrylic. And let me tell you that the possibilities are endless with this medium. The most popular, of course, and most people will recognize these from the store, is your standard stretched canvas. So this is going to be ready-made from the manufacturer, very minimal effort, and really just allows you to get started on your painting. Most are going to be back stapled, so they are basically folded over tight onto these sort of wooden frames and then stapled. Most of them from a Michaels or Hobby Lobby are all done entirely for you, and really just makes it so much easier. Keep in mind, canvas is going to be your most expensive cost when it comes to painting, as these can be $30 upwards to $100, but you can get them on sale. Michaels or Hobby Lobby, they tend to put them on sale quite frequently, so you can save some money. They also have different shapes, which I find interesting. So here's an example of the oval back staple. You can see here the exact same thing applies, but just in a really cool, interesting shape. And when they're side by side, you can really see how it would change the look and the feeling of a painting, not having those standard sort of squared corners. So something to keep in mind that using, can we pause for a second? That using a different shape or size canvas can really affect the way that your painting looks, and just, again, keeps it different and unique. Thank you, Kathleen. You go ahead. Next, we have our rolled canvas. So you can also make your own, and these are going to be made from cotton or linen. Now, these are going to be completely handmade. So you will have to stretch these on your own with your stretcher bars and make your own canvas. This is next level. I personally love the ready-made. To be honest with you, I'm lazy. I like to just paint and go. So for those of you who stretch your own canvas, 12 out of 10 from me. Excellent. Good for you. Just not my style. Next, we have our canvas panels. So these are going to be basically the cousin to the canvas, and these are cotton canvas on a wooden board. So these are great for beginners, excellent for those who are looking to stay on a budget. They usually are much less expensive, and for me, I find they're a lot easier to frame. So if you're selling artwork to your customers and you want them to be able to go to the store and pick up a frame off the shelf, these are going to fit perfectly within those. So a great option if you're not looking for something super expensive, or if you're doing a study like us today, an excellent option. Now we have a acrylic pad as an alternative as well. So we're doing our top-down selling here. Basically, these are going to be thick sheets of paper that will withstand the weight of acrylic paint when it dries, and also so it doesn't seep through. These are excellent for studying, following along to our class today on YouTube, etc. Just a really, really awesome alternative. And I find if you like journaling or keeping a sketchbook, this will work very similar to that, but with painting. Now, mine here is actually removable, which is a bonus option for you. You can just remove this out of your book, cut off those edges, and then go ahead and frame the piece as is if that's something you're interested in. So a really cool option. Not all books will have that, of course. You may have to cut them yourselves, but just something to keep in mind. All right, varnishing. We did talk about this quickly in the demo earlier for this course. Varnishing is one of those subjects, and again, I'll let you know, Kathleen, if I have to pause. This segment always gets me going, but varnishing you can do if you want to, or you don't have to. It is entirely an artist's preference. But let's start with what is varnishing. So varnishing is spraying or painting a protective coating over top of your finished painting or artwork. And this will make your paintings last longer, especially if they are unframed. So it's essentially a nice clear coat on top of your canvas or your canvas pad, etc. And again, it all depends on your preference. There are some artists who do not like the smell, do not like how it looks. They might not like the finish. There you can see I'm just pretending I'm spraying my spray fixative all over my canvas. Usually comes in an aerosol in matte, glossy, or semi, so you can change the finish of your painting. Or you have the options to do your brush on varnish, which is going to be in a liquid form. And you'll see a lot of cool reels or TikToks or shorts of artists varnishing their paintings. And you see that color just come to life right off of the canvas and really make a beautiful saturated painting. And I have started to varnish. We talked about at the demo a natural alternative. Some artists, as I was mentioning, can't stand the smell, don't have the space or the ventilation to do so. And so just keep that in mind that if it doesn't work for you, you're maybe just starting out with acrylic and you don't want to dive into that, you do not have to. None of the work we're doing in this course will be varnished unless you choose to on your own. Now, speaking of ventilation, a nice segue for the art safety section. I am a huge advocate for art safety. I think it is very important to take seriously with whatever medium you are working with. So not just acrylic, this extends beyond to every medium. The first thing is good ventilation. You should have, if possible, of course, a window open, an air purifier, or a fan if possible. So I have a HEPA filter in my studio that I run consistently while I am painting. And this is going to take the VOCs out of the air and make sure that your air is as clean as possible while you are working. When an acrylic medium dries, it lets off a VOC gas. Even though these are considered non-toxic, it's still in your air. So something to consider. Oil painting, that is a whole other situation. Oil paints have come a long way, but even with acrylic, a lot of people don't see that with acrylic, you will need one as well. So keep that in mind. Your painting space. Now, again, if possible, try to avoid important areas in your home. So your bedroom where you are sleeping for 8 to 9 hours, or your kitchen where you are making food. If possible, have a space in your home that is not one of these areas. Now, everyone has obviously different living space, so just be sure to work with what you've got, but just as something to keep in mind as you progress through this medium. Washing your hands, very important. If you do get paint on your hands, make sure you use your soap and water as soon as possible. Sitting on your skin is not a good thing. Anything, whether it's pencil, paints, etc., the longer it sits on your hand, the more your body absorbs it. So keep that in mind and wash your hands as quickly as possible. And then, of course, my last point was, and it disappeared from me. Can you pause for a second? Thank you. Food or drink. Thank you, Kathleen. You saved me. Food or drink in your studio area. I see this a lot of artists painting while they eat or while they drink. Oops, I drank my paint water. Because these paints are letting off VOC gas into the air, it can be on your food, it can be on your water, cup, container, mug, coffee, whatever. So just keep that in mind. If you have to have a drink in your studio, use a bottle, like a bottle of water, your own sort of reusable bottle, whatever works for you. Just make sure it has a lid on it. Very, very important. We're ingesting paint by eating or drinking, even if it's not on your hands or your face. Just something to keep in mind. I'm a huge advocate for art safety, and it's definitely not discussed or talked enough. So I wanted to include this in this segment. So thank you so much for rewinding that for me. I appreciate it. Let's go ahead and keep moving on here. Everyone is hopefully doing okay right now. I know it's been a lot. It's probably very overwhelming. But again, if you have any questions, we can definitely pause, take a break, and I can answer any questions. We're going to start the demo here in a few minutes as well. So maybe if you want to, maybe we can take a little bit of a break, a breather, questions, and get your paints and stuff ready to go if that's a plan.
Yep. I was just about to say we definitely have a lot of things going on on the website.
Okay.
There's been a bit of a discussion or their own conversation as well. So I think this would be like a great opportunity.
Sure. Let's take a breather. It's been a lot.
Yeah. So I think you guys can like grab your art stuff right now. This would be the best time for you to do it while we entertain a couple of questions from YouTube and the website as well. Well, given the fact that we have shared a lot of information, somebody was asking if we have like a written version of this. Apparently, for now, we are making the recording available afterwards.
Yes.
If you have purchased the scores, make sure you have. Well, I dropped the link for the recording where you can access it. But as for the written version, it will be like a little bit of a. It will be like a lecture, wouldn't it? But
yeah. Again, it's a lot. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's a lot. I totally understand. So again, don't be shy. Whether you're on the website or YouTube, don't be shy. But I would definitely say if you can't digest all this, I definitely can't. Just rewatch it. It might take you 2-3 times. Make some notes, maybe. But definitely, it's a lot. It's a lot. So you're not alone.
No worries. It's a good thing, actually. I think people really did appreciate you as well. It's like we've got some good students as well who did say they were taking notes, so thank you.
Perfect. And then, A+.
That's really cool. We've got people from the website. We've got a little bit of a conversation going on about washing brushes. Judy did share. We can boil some water, fill a container with the boiled water, dip and hold your brush with the tip down into the boiled water, but don't let it touch the bottom, and hold it just for a minute. So that's basically the technique that works for Judy. What are your thoughts about this, Cassie? Yeah.
Yeah, I personally have not, but I can definitely imagine how the hot water would react with
Yeah.
the paint particles. I think that's an excellent, excellent idea. And usually, when you're washing, like, let's say acrylic, I can't speak for anything else, but when you're washing acrylic, usually hot soapy water is what I default to. So that it's basically just removing the soap aspect and just using that hot water to clean your brush. So definitely, whatever works for you. It sounds like a great system to me. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's been like a lot of sharing as well, especially on my end where I learned it the hard way. I left my brushes before in the hot
Yes.
water, and I was like, and then it's literally just like that, and I'm like, ooh.
Yes. Especially the
um,
synthetic kind that are made of manufactured materials. Yes, they will mold and bend to where they are left, essentially. Yes. You learn the hard way.
exactly. Oh my gosh. But that works for Judy, and pretty much sure it's a good thing to try and test it out as well, so you guys
Definitely.
can tell. Yeah. Awesome. And then we've got a couple of questions from earlier, which I think we can answer before we begin.
Bring it on. Yep.
Um, awesome. So James, I think he mentioned he got a like a recent comment saying I can paint on a small canvas and glue it in a larger sketchbook, or which I think is connected with his previous question: can acrylics be used in the Etcher sketchbook? Have you tried this personally, Cassie? Or
I personally have not. I have been practicing because of you all watercolors. So I personally have not. However, I do know that the thickness of the paper and the amount of water that it can take with the watercolor, I'm sure would be more than fine with the Etcher sketchbooks. So the acrylic pad, Etcher sketchbooks, anything that has a very like a 300, forgive me, GSM, I believe it's called in watercolor land. I call it in watercolor land. That would be the exact same for acrylic, no problems at all. I think you'll be more than happy. You might get a little bit of a buckle because acrylic is plastic when it dries, so you might have some push and pull of the paper. But again, if you put it on a scanner or flatten it out as best as you can for taking pictures, you should be more than fine.
gotcha. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. And I
Yeah.
stand corrected earlier for Judy's sharing. I think she did clarify that it's not for washing brushes, only for reshaping them after they are already clean. So
Gotcha.
good point.
Perfect. If you have some wayward hairs, your brush is looking a little
Yeah.
sad, that would be an excellent way to do that. Perfect. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well,
Excellent.
that's a good thing to try still, everybody. Okay, from the YouTube as well. H Steel. What is the light fast rating on the paint? Would you know? Or I think for
I
the
do
paints that you use.
have, I actually have them right next to me. I don't know. So the light fastness of the titanium white Academy acrylic, I believe, oh my God, I think it's one. Is it a one? Excellent. So
Cool.
it's excellent
Yeah, I
on
think
the
that's
white. Let me check another one for you. They're all excellent by my quick look here. So excellent, excellent, excellent. So 2 thumbs up to Grumbacher for the Academy acrylic. All rated excellent. Hopefully that helps.
gotcha. I think it does answer her question.
Perfect.
Okay, I think for some of the questions we can ask them at the end.
At the end?
Um,
Perfect.
yeah, I'm gonna be selecting just 2 more questions, I believe,
Yep.
from sure on the website. So, how is smooth hot press paper or cold press texture paper better for acrylics? Sorry.
Oh, very good question. I personally do not use a lot of sketchbooks for my acrylic, quite honest. I use a lot of canvas board, the panels, and the canvas. I really don't think it would matter. Again, don't quote me on this, but just from my experience and what I'd imagine it would be like, as long as the thickness of the paper is there, I think really the only difference would be the texture. So the texture, if you're looking for something a little bit more bumpy, the acrylic might at times roll over the bumps. So you will see this in canvas as well. They have little pits, and sometimes the paint can actually skip over, and that's where you get those little like white dots throughout your painting. They have to go in and manually fill, unless you use like, let's say, a gesso or a coating first, and then you paint. So Just keep in mind with the texture. Now, again, I'm not too familiar with watercolor. I believe the texture is cold press. Forgive me if I'm wrong, and please yell at me. But you might notice some more bumps with the texture. And just as it dries and as you layer, it might change the look of it. I like as smooth as possible with my acrylics. So I would say, I think I have hot press in the Perfect Sketchbook from Etcher. That would be the variation that I would use. But again, acrylic is all about trying new things, experiment. As we mentioned, it's a forgiving medium. So really just go for it. Do a spot test. So on the corner of a sketchbook page that you don't really care about, try some acrylic on there and see how you feel. Maybe do 1, 2, 3 layers and then see how you feel about it. But I would definitely say probably the flatter, smoother, the better, especially for beginners who don't want to have a challenge of there's a lot of texture there, and now I have to go in and fill it in, if that makes sense. So that would be my recommendation for sure. But excellent question.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
And I think we've got a question from both YouTube and on a website
Sure.
about the round disc for cleaning brushes.
Yes.
Where do we get that?
Okay, so I bought mine from a Ma and Pa store here where I am. It was kind of near the brushes and the brush care section. I have yet to see one in like in Michael's or Hobby Lobby, but I would definitely say like check your local art store or art stores online. Blick, Jackson Art, all these different places online. They might have one. I would say under the brush cleaning section, that's where it would be. I call mine like cleaning disc. I don't know if that's the correct Google term. I'm not sure. But even check Amazon, something like that. They may have something as well. You could do like brush cleaning accessories and hopefully that would pop up for you. But it was literally in a little cellophane bag with a tiny little price sticker on it with no label, no company, etc. So I don't know if they had made their own and were selling it and I just happened to find it in the clearance bin. I'm not sure. But brush cleaning disc, brush scrubber, something like that might be a good Google term, but definitely saving a lot of time and a lot of money. So definitely invest for sure.
Awesome. And I think we got an answer from Jean on the website. She says it's frequently called a puck.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, I think you can find it in different brands as well. So I think it's generally available for any of them. So
yes.
Thank you so much for clarifying. And for I think I'll just like to add to this for James. I was asking if we can paint on Etcher Sketchbook. Not only the paper, you can paint on the paper, but you can also paint on the cover itself, like in the everyday sketchbook. So I think this is kind of like a canvas feel. So I think after you're learning this, learning from Cassy over here, you can definitely use it as your own canvas.
Make a beautiful custom cover.
Right?
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes.
Awesome. And for the other questions, I think these are really intricate questions which we can expound further.
Sure.
Real beautiful question. I'll reserve that for later.
Excellent.
Okay, I think you guys had enough time to grab your stuff, so I think we can proceed.
Perfect.
Awesome.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and start the demo here. Now, we might have a little bit of a pause between now and the demo screen. There we are. Perfect. Video magic. I love it. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with our demo. Now, this is the fun part, the actual painting part, rather than the theory, if you will. And I'm going to start with my Borden and Riley disposable palette paper. Now, you can use an acrylic pad for this, a canvas. You can paint on your disposable palette. You can paint on your palette itself, as long as you have enough room to use for a little triangle that we're going to do as our color swatch or our color chart, then you will have enough room. So I just prefer this. It's a little tearaway book that I use. It's very glossy, allows for a great mixing. So that's why I chose to use this one today. I'm going to default to my favorite filbert brush. You can use whatever brush you prefer, any shape or size. I have my water container off to the side with a little bit of paper towel. Paper towel or a towel is going to be important to dab off the excess water. And then, of course, I have my Grumbacher Academy acrylic paints here. Now, these are in our primary colors, and we're going to go ahead and drop these onto our palette paper, or our board, whatever you are working on. We're going to start with our cadmium red, and I'm going to use about a quarter size dollop on the top of this triangle. So this is going to be the peak. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the blue and the yellow for the other corners. So I'm going to grab my yellow paint. I have the screw top lids, so they do take me a little bit to get off here, but rather than the flip lids, that's okay. I'm going to put a quarter size dollop in the bottom left. You can see our triangle starting to form here. And then I'm going to grab my blue. And again, whatever blue you have available, whatever red you have available, I am not picky. As long as it is red, yellow, and blue, you can follow along. I'm going to do about a quarter size for the blue, and there is my triangle. Now, this is the Cassydraws version of a color chart or a color wheel. I am not a big fan of coloring in tiny spaces for my color wheel, so I just decided to do it this way to make things a little bit easier. Now, what we're going to do is we are going to show you how to mix secondary colors. Now, mixing with acrylic is one of the most challenging aspects of painting, and you are going to be challenged by this for the foreseeable future. It can be a little bit of a pain, so that's why we're tackling it first. So we're going to mix our secondary colors. I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to wet it with a little bit of water, not too much, but I want to activate those brush bristles, dabbing off onto the paper towel some of the excess, and I'm going to dunk into my red paint and my blue paint. And we are going to be making purple. Now, blue is a very dominant color in the color wheel, so you will need a little bit less blue than you do red. And this is all part of the process. You're going to make mistakes. Do not be discouraged. Taking in a little bit more blue now, and we're making some lovely purple. Now, it's going to be hard to see. Normally with purple, I would add in some white because it's very hard to see on the brush. It looks almost brown or black. Normally what I would do is I'm using this in a painting. I would add white to this, but for now, we're just going to leave it as is. There is our purple mix. And I'm just mixing this color in between the red and the blue so that I remember what colors made what and how to make it again. Important aspect of painting as well is to wash off your brush every single time you are going to change colors, or if you find that your brush is a little dry, I like to just get in the habit of cleaning off my brush and starting fresh. So I've washed it off in the water, I've dabbed it onto the paper towel, and you might have to do this a couple times to get really inside that brush. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add yellow and I'm going to add blue together, and this is going to make green. Now, yellow is a very soft color in the color palette and is very easily overwhelmed. So you are going to need just a little bit of blue to make this beautiful sort of green color. And that's as easy as it is, just mixing these two primary colors together. And we already have two new colors. I'm going to add in a little bit more blue and just really get to the green that I'm looking for. Your green might be a little bit lighter, a little bit darker. It is entirely your choice. As long as we've got some green, we are doing things right. So let's go ahead and wash off our brush once more. You can see in the top left there, I'm just really kind of dunking into that water, swishing this around. I'm using the side of the container and not down in deep to the container. I'm using the side. I want to make sure all of that excess color and debris falls to the bottom and out of my brush. I don't want to jam that debris back into my brush. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow and a little bit of red, and we're going to mix orange. So there is our three secondary colors, and I'm just going to mix, 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 and make sure that's all nice and seamless. With acrylic, you might have to kind of swirl this color around a few times to get it fully mixed. And there you have it. There is our secondary color chart, if you will. Very, very simple, straightforward, three new colors, and just a lot of fun, in my opinion. Hopefully you're finding this fun as well. Let's wash off our brush. And we're going to go ahead and make our tertiary colors. So essentially, this color wheel could go on and on and on, making endless variations of color. But let's talk about our tertiaries. So our tertiary colors basically come into effect when you mix your secondary color with a primary color. You're going to make a variation shade. So I'm going to take my purple, and I'm going to put it in between the purple and the red colors. And I'm adding a little bit of red to this mixture. Now you can already see just by a little bit of red, we're making this purple into what I call a beautiful cranberry color. So it's much more of a wine, a much more red, warm color than that cool, dark purple. So go ahead and mix those two together. And again, you can watch this back. If we're moving a little fast, you can watch this back and do it over again as well. We're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So our other tertiary color is going to be purple and blue together to make this very interesting navy color. Beautiful, beautiful colors, and a great way to learn how your paint reacts as well. So we're going to go ahead and take our green, and you guessed it, we're going to mix it with some blue. This here is my favorite color combination. This stunning teal I have used in a lot of different paintings. Just a really, really beautiful, beautiful color. And already, I mean, we've added 3 new colors to our color palette and just endless possibilities, a lot of experimenting, and just the beauty of acrylic. So there's our teal. We're going to wash off our brush. We're going to dab off that excess. We don't want it too wet. And we're going to take the rest of this green and we're going to mix it with yellow now. And now this color goes very, very light lime lemon type color. Very, very interesting, beautiful shade. And look at the difference between these tertiary colors, that yellow green versus the teal. Very, very stark difference and can be used in many different applications. Just a stunning, stunning way to get different shades of green and blue very, very easily. All right, washing off our brush now. And you guessed it, we're taking our orange and we're going to mix with our yellow. This side of your color mixing chart is going to be very similar. A lot of the yellows and reds don't change all that much. They do a little. You can see here it's very mustard. We're making a very mustard color here. Changes a little, but not a lot to notice. Those greens, very stark difference, whereas the yellows and the reds tend to kind of stay in the same look and feel, if you will. So just keep that in mind. Adding some more red to this for our last tertiary color. And this is very blood orange. I find this very, very blood orange. This is great for campfires, painting in fires, painting in a beautiful sunset. Excellent color swatches for that type of application. And there we have, whoops, I'm lagging a little bit, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. That is going to be our color swatch chart. So rather than filling in a color chart and doing it this way, I find this to be much more comprehensive and, in my opinion, hopefully you find it as well, easy to follow. Something very straightforward, and it feels like you're mixing the color for a painting and not just like, oh, I have to fill this whole chart. So hopefully you found that helpful. So I'm going to move my color swatch up above. So that's my palette. You're going to move your palette up. And now we're going to start working on another sheet or another section of your palette. Whatever you are working on, we're basically going to move into a fresh new space. Now I want to talk about complementary colors. So on the color wheel, there are complementary colors, colors that do not work well with each other, and we're going to dive into complementary. So I'm going to start with a rectangle of yellow. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop this yellow in. Hopefully we're good. It's lagging for me a little bit, so hopefully I am still a-okay with you guys, but
You're good, you're good.
we're good? Okay, perfect. Thank you. So we've got our yellow rectangle, and the complementary color to yellow is actually purple. And complementary colors are usually used in a lot of graphic designs. So think of sports teams. We have the Minnesota Vikings, purple and yellow. All of these colors, a lot of brands or companies will actually use these because side by side, they are very appealing to the eye. They are very, very interesting, eye-catching, and can be seen from far away. So our first set of complementary colors, we have yellow and our purple. Now we're starting something new, so I'm going to wash off my brush. Always remember, clean off that brush, dab onto your paper towel, and then we're going to grab our next set of colors. So we're going to go ahead and dive into the blue. We've got our blue first, going to do another rectangle down below. Excellent. Wash off that brush. We don't want them to mix quite yet, so we're going to have to wash our brush in between each swatch. We're going to dab that off onto our paper towel. Perfect. And we're going to dive into orange. So orange is going to be the next color we are putting side by side. Now, you may find at this stage on your palette that you may have to mix new colors or make a new orange if you don't have enough left. And that's just what I'm doing here. I'm mixing some more orange, some red, and some yellow together so I can fill in this swatch. So your paint either by now may have dried or you just simply did not mix enough like I did. We can just go ahead and quickly mix that together. So there is our next set, our blue and our orange. Hope everyone is doing okay so far. If you need me to take a break,
Yes.
let me know.
I was just about to pause because
Sure.
there's a question, real quick question from the website from Bev. I see Cassie is wearing a glove on her painting hand. Any reason?
Oh, yes. So very good question. Kind of like a long, boring personal story, but essentially I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia a couple years ago. And so I thought it was actually onset carpal tunnel or like a tendonitis type injury, just repetitive injury. But it turns out it was actually fibromyalgia. So I have a lot of like widespread body pain, and a lot of it actually centralizes in my hands. So the muscles get very tired, not a lot of blood flow. I tend to have very less blood flow in my hands and my fingers. So with that drawing sleeve, it actually promotes the blood flow. It's very similar to like if you wore a compression sock or on your knee or your leg, athletes working out, etc. So it's the same thing. It essentially keeps my wrist nice and sturdy, feeling good, and just promotes that blood flow. So if you do have issues with your hands, wrist, elbow, etc., these are available. You can buy them online from your local like pharmacy, and they really do allow you to extend your drawing or painting sessions, and it just keeps everything nice and firm. And for me, it just is has become a habit now. So very good question. I get asked that a lot, and it basically just helps me paint longer and feeling more confident, essentially, in my hands.
Thank you so much for clarifying. And I think Cassie has talked about that in our podcast interview with
Yes.
Anya. I am dropping the link here in the chat on both YouTube and on our website so that you can probably listen to it while, you're doing your homework later on.
Yes.
So you can save that link. I'm just going to drop that link here in our website, which is a lot of chat. I'm scrolling so fast. Hold on. Let me just go ahead and drop that for you. There we go.
Perfect.
And I think that was pretty much it for now. I am going to pan over to you again,
Awesome.
and then you can proceed. Awesome.
Excellent. All right. Perfect. All right. So I've washed off my brush, making sure everything is nice and clean. And again, you might need, if you don't want to use paper towels, you might want to use a towel itself and then just wash it afterwards. Everyone is different, but you may need to replace that at some point as well. We're doing a lot of washing and drying here. So I'm going to remix my green. I did not have enough. I'm adding blue and yellow together. And I'm just going to go ahead and do my last swatch for a complementary color. So it's going to be green. And if anyone can guess in chat what the next color will be while I'm washing my brush, drum roll. Washing, patting dry. And you guessed it, we're going to dunk into our red. So that is going to be our last color swatch. So red and green are Christmas colors, as we're all familiar with during the holidays. We've got our red and green color swatch. All right, so side by side, as I mentioned earlier, these complementary colors work very well side by side together. Beautiful, bold, striking colors, lots of logos. Next time you go out or you see things online, take a look at a company's logo. And a lot of times they will pair a lot of these colors together without us even really realizing it. And they just work so well on, pamphlets and posters and all that good stuff. Now, what I want to show you is how these complementary colors mix together. So they are beautiful side by side, but when you mix them together, you get a little bit of a hot mess. I like to prefer this a natural palette. We're going to get a lot of brown, muted tones. So it's very interesting to see these two gorgeous colors combined together to make some questionable color mixing. All right, we're all thinking it. It's okay. So we've got this color here, very sort of burnt umber type brown. We're going to do the exact same thing with the orange and the blue. Now, again, blue, a very dominant color in your color wheel. I have added way too much blue in my example here. So I'm going back in and adding in some orange to this mix to show you more of a true mix of a 50-50 between the orange and the blue. And you can see here you get a very sort of dark olive green, I would say, a very olive green color. This would work actually perfectly for a forest or some sort of like landscape painting. So just keep that in mind. The possibilities are endless. And that's what I really want to drive home with this course today is the possibilities for acrylic color mixing, your color theory is truly endless. Now for the last section, we're going to mix our green and our red together. And I'm going to dive back into my green, add this in, and it turns into a very sort of burnt sienna, burnt orange type color. So again, just a really great visual of seeing these bright, stunning colors together. And then when they're joined as one, turn to a much more muted, very sort of natural looking palette. So if you're ever lost and you need to make some of these colors, just keep this section in mind. I try to practice this every once in a while and just really kind of keep these skills sharp. All right, so I'm going to move everything aside here and I'm going to add on white and black to my palette paper or in your palette, whatever you're working with. About a quarter size dollop is fine. You don't need too much. We're just kind of playing around with paint today. So just adding in some white and some black. Now we're going to go through, and the reason why I'm mixing these is we're going to start working on warm colors, cool colors, and kind of getting some gradients happening here. So I'm going to rip off this sheet from my palette paper. And you can definitely see why I use palette paper today. Lots of things going on, lots of mixing. So if you need to take a pause and go wash off your palette or etc., please do so at any time. So let's talk about our warm and our cool colors. So just like there are endless possibilities with color mixing, there's also really cool options for gradients and cool colors and warm colors within your palette. So let's do, and I apologize, my camera sometimes likes to pick up my drawing sleeve rather than actually what I am painting. I should probably fire them, but just bear with me as I'm adding yellow to each of these colors to make a lighter gradient. There we go. I started with some really bright red, and every time my paintbrush has left the palette paper, I have added on more yellow. And you can see that I am getting this really cool, interesting, very fiery gradient. These last two swatches, I'm adding in some white. So even though they are getting very light, very sort of creamy and pastel, these are all still considered warm colors. So warm colors can be used for your sunsets, your campfires, as I mentioned earlier, really sort of bright sunlit areas. I think of like a savanna in The Lion King, very warm color palette. And all of these would be considered your warm, stunning colors. So personally, my favorite palette to work in is the warm color tones, but again, everyone is different, and I will show you the alternative of your cool palette as well. So here we have our blue. I'm just jumping right in with my basic blue out of the tube. And I'm actually going to add in some red. So we're going to kind of dive into this navy purple color. And I'm going to add in red each time my brush leaves the canvas. And you can see here, it kind of makes a very interesting navy purpley blue color. We can add in some white as I see here. So I'm making this much lighter, like a robin egg blue. Just as long as you're changing up these swatches every time your paintbrush leaves your palette, you are working in basically and following along with what I'm doing. So excellent, excellent work. Perfect. We're going to add in some red. You can see here I'm making a little bit of a purple. Going to add in some blue. And then I'm going to add in some black to this as well. This is going to turn into a very dark navy color and still considered in the cool color scheme. Perfect. It's really interesting to see these colors side by side as well. These two different variations of warm versus cool. Very, very interesting. And the last swatch, I'm going to add in a lot of Mars Black. It's not quite black. Sometimes the camera will make it look a little bit darker, but this is a very, very dark navy. And again, washing my brush off every single time I dive into something new, just keeping that brush clean. But really, really interesting to see how these look and the different types of warm or cool colors that you can make by adding black, adding white. Again, I feel like a broken record, but the possibilities are endless. So have fun with this and really just experiment. That's really all this is experimenting and playing with paint. I'll give you guys a few moments while we're. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just about to say I love these colors that you made, and people
Thank
are
you.
really appreciating the dual camera setup. And
Oh,
somebody,
perfect.
Lisbeth said you could teach how to teach art, which is a
Oh,
good
bless
idea.
you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, we always worry and we hope that what we're saying comes across and conveys well. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for saying that. Thank you. All right. So I think if are we gonna do you want to take a pause or are we good to go?
I think this would be a perfect time for a pause. Thank you
Pause?
so much for mentioning.
Yes, yeah. Just stop me,
Um,
girl. Yep.
we've got still a few more minutes left, so no, not a problem. We still have a lot of activities for you, I guess.
Yes.
Um, okay, so I'm just gonna read some beautiful comments right here. Cassie is doing a terrific job teaching, says Jane.
Oh,
Jane suggested that this would be nice. This kind of setup would be nice for florals. I totally agree. Um, okay, let me just go back to the conversation earlier about the gloves that you were wearing. Um,
sure.
okay, so let's see. I just need to get back to some of these
No
conversations.
worries.
There's a lot. Oh my gosh.
Good, good.
Let me. You guys are not making it easier for me, but hold on. Let me just. All right. So let's see right here. Bev says, "I'm so sorry, Cassie. So much love and strength to you. What an inspiration you are."
Thank
And
you.
Jean says, I wear a compression gloves for my arthritis.
Yes.
And to which I responded, we all have different armor. And my armor would be a high table because otherwise I would be crouching.
Right,
But
right.
oh my gosh, somebody said in a YouTube, I've missed so much. No Discord announcement. Oh my gosh. Let's
Sorry,
see.
Banta.
Oh. Well, I will definitely entertain a few questions from. Oh, we've got a question speaking from James. Do the mixed colors stay wet so they can be used?
So normally with acrylic, and this is partly the reason why I use the palette paper, is I find the palette paper tends to keep them wet. They don't dry as fast as, let's say, a normal plastic or like ceramic tile, like ceramic style palette. So that's why I tend to use them. Acrylic dries fast no matter what, I'll be very honest. So you can use a little spray bottle or a mister to keep those paints wet. You can use a stay wet palette, which actually has a sponge in it that will keep your mixed colors and your tube colors wet or a little bit moist so you can use them and use them more frequently. But really getting fast at color mixing is going to be your best friend with acrylic because no matter what, even with some mediums or extenders, they do just dry pretty quickly. But for this demo, I was working very quickly. So I was able to re-pick up those colors and use them for something else. But if it was, let's say, a 3-4 hour session, those would be dry for sure. So just keep that in mind.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. And I think that's the main difference between acrylic and watercolor. So, good point.
Yes.
I think I can entertain one more question from the earlier chat. I'm reserving some for the Q&A.
Yep. Perfect.
um, all right, just a quick question from Bev. Do you have any recommendation for the palette if we don't have the exact brand? I know you did say that we don't need to go all in at first, but
No.
do you have like good, yeah,
Yeah.
recommendations for beginners?
Yes. So I, by saying anything, I feel it would be too easy of an answer, but I would say anything. You can use, like, for example, I have the Borden and Riley disposable palette paper. You don't have to use Borden and Riley. There is Canson brands. There are all kinds of different brands for disposable palettes. For me, I find them to be the cheapest to get started, unless it's, let's say, like a dollar store palette, which totally will work fine, especially if you're just getting started. Between plastic and the disposable would be your cheapest alternative. If you're trying to go green and you don't like the waste from the disposable palette, I would definitely say a reusable plastic one would be it would suffice. If you want to invest, there are different options of palettes. You can get glass tops, you can get ceramic. I will say a great option kind of in between the two, so not your, basic plastic, but not your glass, would be the Freddie Weber peelable palette. And that is going to allow you, once the palette dries, you can actually peel off the clumps of paint from your palette, use a little bit of a scraper, and they usually tend to just come right off. It's just whatever it's coated with that Freddie Weber uses. It's a great alternative. I've used both. For this, again, the demo worked perfectly with the disposables, but if you're looking for something with less waste, definitely one of those. But regardless, I would say whatever you prefer. You can actually coat things in plastic wrap. I see a lot of artists do this where they coat it in, everyone calls it different. Plastic wrap, saran wrap, cling wrap, whatever you want to call it. They actually cover their glass top or, whatever they're using for their palette, and they'll actually paint on that and then just peel away the plastic, and there's very minimal cleanup. So that's always an option as well. So I would say whatever you have available. I think it was Bev, right? Bev asked that. Bev, whatever you have available. I say whatever works. Oh, I can't hear you. Sorry. Might be muted.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh my God. Is it me? Is it me?
I'm so sorry.
Redo.
Banta said. Yeah, Banta said on YouTube, "Oh, Ventrace work too, lol."
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Awesome. And I think I can just share. One last question before we can proceed then. Does acrylic paint ball up on plastic palettes like watercolor does? Says Lisbeth.
Oh, great question. I find on the plastic, I feel like it depends on how much paint you have on it. So I would say I use about a quarter sized. I find that it doesn't ball up. It just tends to get smushed around. Like, it's really hard to describe. I find it gets very thin, and then it's very hard to pick up the paint from the plastic palette. So I would say if you're using a plastic that seems to be very absorbent, you are going to need a lot more paint on your palette. If you use a lot of water, it will then skate around your palette. So it becomes very, very thin, very translucent. We'll talk about glazing later in the course, but it will tend to turn to a watercolor type, and then it pools and it skates is the best way that I can describe it. So again, you'll experiment with your own materials. Everyone will have a different palette, but I would say if it's very absorbent, you'll need more paint, and you might find it dries very quickly. When acrylic thins, this is a good little side note. When acrylic thins, it dries much faster. So you want to try to keep it as balled up and clumped together especially if you're mixing a custom color. You want to have a lot of that volume there so you can just keep grabbing from it. The more skatey it gets and the more flat, the quicker it dries. So just keep that in mind.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And I think we can expound on this further because I think I got follow-up questions, but we wanted to accomplish more for today. And then I'll let Cassy expound further during our Q&A. We've got some pretty interesting questions, so I'll save the best for last.
Perfect. Yes. We've got a little bit left to go, and then we'll dive into our homework, but
awesome. Yeah, no worries. Alrighty then.
All right.
I will let you. There we go.
Perfect. All right, so what I'm doing here is I'm mixing a nice green color. So remember, to mix our green, we're going to do blue and yellow together. And this segment is all going to be about playing with colors. So the different ways we can mix and just have fun with our color mixing. So I'm starting with a kind of even sized rectangle in the top left. And I'm going to go ahead and add in yellow each time my brush leaves the camera. So every time I'm leaving, I'm going in, diving into more yellow paint. and adding that in as a gradient. Now, this is not going to be as smooth because of my palette paper. It doesn't let it really sink in. It's very gloss, but once it's on your paper or your canvas or whatnot, this will be much smoother. And I apologize, it's out of focus. My camera really loves my sleeve. We were talking about the sleeve earlier and now it's obsessed. So we're just going to go ahead and add in yellow until the end part of this gradient is as yellow as I can get it. And already within this little segment, you can see that there are probably easily 10 different shades here of this green color, going from a beautiful sort of emerald to this really interesting yellow green at the end. So a really beautiful, beautiful gradient here. And by doing these gradient swatches, we'll call them, really tests your ability to color mix and blend wet on wet paint together. And we're going to talk about that later in our course. I believe we start diving into course 2 and course 3 about wet on wet techniques, wet on dry. So just have fun with this. If it does not look like mine, don't fret. There's a lot left to cover. So the segment down below, I'm going to do something very interesting, and we're going to start with the same green. And every time my paintbrush leaves this camera view, I am adding in red. So we are going to mix our, again, complementary colors, red and green, and I'm going to mix this green with red until we end up in a beautiful burnt sienna brown type color. And you can see here, let's be real, everyone, this is kind of an ugly color. It is. It probably would have very few applications in a painting unless it was something very specific. But I want to show you that you can do anything with acrylic. Anything. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep diving into this red. And it's just naturally mixing on my brush. So I obviously have green paint still in my brush. And it's just mixing as I go on its own. Hopefully we're still good. There we go. A little bit of a lag there. Perfect. And we're just going to keep adding red until you'll see this brown color start to emerge. Very, very interesting. And I find just, I don't know, a lot of fun. If you find that you can see my brush is a little bit dry, you can always go ahead and add in some more water as well. So if you find that your brush is drying out, there's not a lot left on your brush bristles, you can see there it's very, very dry. You can just go ahead, dunk back into your water a little bit, not too much. We don't want it to skate around our palette, but you can just go ahead, add in a little bit of water and just reactivate that brush as well. So right away, look at these colors, everyone. Beautiful colors going from green to a burnt sienna, brown, red type clay color. Very interesting how we did that in our gradient and just the power of acrylic and just two colors together. So I get a lot of questions asking about, do I need this color? Do I need a kit with, 50 different colors? You really don't. We can make them. We can experiment with what we have and use what is in your art kit, especially if you're a beginner just starting out. We don't want to spend thousands of dollars on acrylic. We might hate this medium and not want to use it. So just try some basic kits or tubes and just have fun. Now we're going to try a gradient into white. So I'm starting with that same beautiful emerald green color and I'm adding white to it now. So essentially I am tinting this color and you're going to see that by adding this white wet on wet, I'm going to a very minty color. We're going to make a very beautiful mint green. Honestly, what probably my favorite in this exercise, this segment here, is this minty color. Really beautiful. White, I find with acrylic tends to mix well into any color and just really makes beautiful pastels. So I'm a huge fan of titanium white, and just this color in general is just stunning in my opinion. So there's an example of how you can make lighter colors, very pastel looking highlights. Yes, just beautiful. Now let's go ahead and we're going to do the alternative now. So I'm going to go ahead and mix my green once more. You can see here in the bottom right, I'm just using another section and mixing this color. Side note, look at how different my greens are, all right? Color mixing is tough. So I've added way too much yellow to this, but for the sake of this study and this exercise is totally okay. But you can definitely see the difference between one is more blue and one is more yellow. And I'm going to go ahead and every time that brush leaves my color palette or leaves this section on the camera, I'm adding black to this. And by adding black, we are darkening this color to a very foresty, very deep, dark green. And this is going to look by the end almost Mars black. This is going to look very, very deep and dark. This would be perfect for, let's say you're painting trees on a landscape and you really want to get those deep, dark shadows. You can see on the bottom of the camera angle, the bottom right, how dark that really is on that camera with my natural light. So we can really take this to where it's now Mars black once more. Works perfect for a shadow or a low light in a landscape painting, or even, let's say, a reflection on the water. So very, very excellent, endless, uses for these sort of color gradients. All right, so I'm going to take this green that I used at the top, and you might have to look at the bottom right camera. It's a little covered, but I'm just going to show you what the tint of that green will look like with white. And you can see that compared to the mint and the light green, very, very different looks by adding white. Same technique, but very, very different color. All right, so there's a little sample. You can kind of see, especially the bottom right hand, and then compared to the top down, just how interesting and beautiful these colors look. So go ahead and do that in your book on your palette, and you can do this with any color. It doesn't have to be green. It could be blue. It could be purple. All are going to be the same technique and the same steps, essentially. All right, now this part of the class, I will say I'm biased, right? We made this class, Etcher and I. I'm very biased with this section, but this is definitely my favorite. And I'm going to show you how to mix colors and match colors with a very minimal color palette. So what I've done is I've put burnt sienna down onto my palette paper, and there is my little swatch of my burnt sienna. So this is straight from the manufacturer, right out of the tube. No other additional colors. This is how it comes from the manufacturer. So I've painted on a little rectangle and I have my little paint blob right on top. Now I'm going to go ahead and match this color by myself, only using primary colors. So I'm starting with a brush of red, a brush of yellow, and a little dab of blue. Not too much. Blue is a very dominant color. And like magic, we are going to mix this color all together. Now, for my first try, okay, it's not perfect. It usually never is. There's always going to be adjustments needed to be made. However, we have a really good base to start from. And the beauty with acrylic is that we can add colors and keep adding until we get to where we want to be. So I know right off the hop, this color is too dark and it is not red enough. So I'm going to add in a little bit of yellow. I'm going to keep adding in yellow. Remember, yellow is a very soft color, so it does get covered over easily by other colors, and it's just much more muted, very translucent usually. So I'm going to add in yellow, and I'm going to add in some more red. I want this to be much more on the copper burnt sienna side. Right now, we're a little bit cool, so I need to pump up those red values. And you can already see by me mixing this color together, we're getting closer. We're getting there. Now, this may take a few tries. You might not get it on the first try, and that is totally okay. Keep in mind, I've been painting for over 6 years and doing artwork for 13 years. So this is not my first rodeo. If you are just starting out, do not be discouraged. Color mixing is going to be your arch nemesis for a very long time. It is still my arch nemesis, so keep that in mind. We're going to keep adding in those colors until we get to a color that is very similar to our burnt sienna. Now, we're not robots. We're not computers. We're going to be as close as we can. It's not going to be perfect. So there's my swatch. That is my mix of my color. I'm going to dab off and wash my brush so you can see the difference. I'm making sure my brush is clean. I'm dunking into my burnt sienna straight from the tube. And there's the burnt sienna swatch from the manufacturer. So we can get close to these colors on our own. And I only use 3 colors. I didn't touch into white. I didn't touch black. It was just my primary colors. And the possibilities are endless. If you can practice this on your own every once in a while. Keep these skills sharp. This will help you moving forward in your painting experience. So just keep that in mind. This was a fun one. I hope you like this little exercise. Again, you can rewind this as many times as you want. If you can't and don't want to do it right now, you can always rewatch this and get as close as possible and keep practicing. And you can do this with any manufactured color, and you can practice that on your own. All right, I'm going to move that over to the side. Just keep in mind, we're doing a lot today. We're moving quick, so you can use that rewind button. But I'm going to show you the exact same techniques in black and white. And this is something that is very important, is your grayscale. Learning how your black and your white paint interact and the colors that you're able to make, or the shades that you're able to make as well. So just as I did before, every single time my paintbrush leaves the palette or leaves my canvas, I am dunking into white. And I'm just working on this wet on wet mix to get as close to a very, very light gray white as possible. Now you'll notice a few times I go back and I wipe my brush off onto paper towel. And the reason being is because you can see that my paint is marbling. So marbling is when you have a leftover color in your brush, for example, black for this segment, is still shining through right on the edge. You see those right on the edge there? That's still on my brush bristles and sort of changing the properties of my paint. So if you ever find that happening, wash your brush, restart, and then kind of start again, if that makes sense. Just your brush basically needs to be cleaned. And for me, I just sometimes I get lazy. And that's on me. But I'm just going to go ahead. There's your gradient to a light white gray. And now I'm going to show you how to get a cool gray and a warm gray. So we can actually tint these grays to our warm and our cool color scale. So think back to our reds and our blues and those color palettes. We can do the exact same thing with our grays. So I'm adding in a little bit of orange. You can do red, any one of those warm colors. And I'm just mixing this in with our grays. Now, this can turn into a sepia color. It can turn into a warmer sort of gray tone, whatever you prefer. Again, the more red or orange that you add, basically the more warm it's going to be. But you can see here, I've changed the gray to have this warm undertone. And we're going to do the exact same thing with our blue. So I'm going to add in a touch of blue. Look at how saturated that is. I barely had anything on my brush, so keep that in mind. Blue is a very strong color. And I'm just going to go ahead and mix this with my gray. And we're going to make what I call a cool gray. So a cool gray would work excellent for a snow leopard painting. I use that a lot. Mountains are going to be more, usually, unless they are, a sunrise or a sunset, normally mountains are a cool gray. And you can see just the swatch on the side, how differently that looks from the sort of circle and the mixing area. When you swatch it off to the side, it really shows the color that you've created. So that would be a warm and a cool gray that you can use interchangeably depending on what you're painting. Really a lot of fun. I hope you guys are enjoying this so far. We're getting up to our homework exercise in a few minutes here, but there you can see the comparison of those red and blues, warm and cool colors to the warm and cool of the gray. So very interesting exercise and a lot of fun in my opinion. Perfect. We're just going to let this video get caught up here. Excellent. Okay, so we're going to work on our homework. So I'm going to explain the homework to you a lot more in detail afterwards, but I want to show you what we're going to be doing. So our first exercise for class 1, our homework, is going to be working on our color matching. So I have chosen as a demo today a color match exercise for my brush cleaner. So the brush cleaner container is this very soft eggshell, very sort of interesting yellow orange color. And I'm going to do my best. I'm going to grab this object, keep it right beside my paints, and I'm going to try to mix this color as best as possible. So I am using my white, red, and yellow together to do my best to make this color. And I am just basically doing the exact same thing as we did with our sepia challenge, matching that burnt sienna, excuse me. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So I'm adding in a lot of these colors until I end up getting the color as close as possible to this container. A lot of fun, very challenging. There you have it. You can kind of see I'm getting there. I probably could have added in a little bit more white to this. It does look now in post-production a little bit darker, but that's all the challenge. As much as I've been using acrylic for a very long time, I still need to practice. I still have lots to learn. So that's something that I can review for myself at the end of these exercises. And you can see here that I'm on the right track. I'm definitely getting there and just challenging myself to try to match this as close as possible. Perfect. Washing off my brush. Look at that paper towel too. Your paper towel is going to be messy. I do find acrylic to be a little bit more messy, so just keep that in mind. All right, so every learner is different. So I want to go through the visual side of the written instructions. So, homework time. What I want you to do is I want you to find 2 or 3 items around your home that you can have next to you while you paint. So, something simple, nothing too crazy. Don't rearrange your house for this, but just something you can have with you, whether it's a pencil sharpener, the color of your drink, maybe your eraser package, whatever. And I want you to use our color matching skills that we learned today to match your paint swatch to your items. And for example, matching your paint swatch to the color of peanut butter. Or let's say you have Windex. We have that really bright, beautiful sort of teal blue color that we all recognize. Whatever you choose as your objects, you're going to match your colors on your palette, as I did there with the brush cleaner, and get as close as possible. And this is going to basically cement your learning. So you're going to take all that you digested today. It was a lot. You're going to take what you digested and apply it on your own by yourself. And I always find when we're alone, we can focus. That's when things really tend to sit in and make sense. So that's what I'm challenging you with today at the end of the class. As I mentioned, at the end of every class, we're going to have homework, and that is today's homework assignment. So have fun with this. Again, I will be available in the Facebook group to give you advice if you need it, look over your work, etc. I'm available anytime, but just have fun with this. And again, if you are a beginner or someone who is new to acrylic, try not to get too frustrated. This will take years to cement and to improve on and really get the hang of. So just keep that in mind. And aside from that, that is it for today's class. And I hope you guys had fun and enjoyed yourselves. And I will hand it over to Kathleen, and I'll be here for any questions.
Awesome. That was amazing. And we have really active members and students, if I must say, on the website. I must say you guys really did a great job of keeping me catch up, making me catch up with all of these things.
Making your work today.
Yeah. Hold on, let me just go ahead and go back to some of these questions. We do have a lot. Let's start with Judy, because this is the recent one. I missed it. Did you add something to that yellow? Did you add something to the yellow? Was it red and white? I presume that was a little bit of red and white.
Yes. So for the brush cleaner swatch, I did yellow, white, and a touch of red. So I wanted it to be on the warmer side. If you just do the yellow and the white, it will turn to like a canary yellow. So just adding a hint of red will kind of bring that to more of the peach kind of warmer side. So yes, I added a little bit of red. Excellent question.
Awesome. Okay, and I think we can proceed with the other questions which I have gathered earlier.
Sure. Yep.
Cleopatra on YouTube says, "Thank you, Etcher and Cassy.
You're
great
welcome.
and informative." Awesome. Let me just go ahead and see. I pretty much filled in the chat, but
Sure.
Let me just see. M on YouTube says, "Thank you, Cassy. I'm hoping Etcher will continue to offer more of these excellent acrylic classes," which reminds me, if you guys would like Cassy to teach more, well, she definitely is teaching more because this is a whole course.
Yes.
This is a whole just the first course of the first class of the 7 week course. We have 4 classes still, and a live feedback session, and in between those weeks we will have homeworks and open studio sessions where we can evaluate and talk about what you've learned in the class, what were your pain points. We can definitely share. All of this is part of the I mean, you can learn more about in the private Facebook group dedicated in the for this course. Sorry. I'm going to be dropping the feedback survey link so that you guys can definitely let us know what other ideas you want, what other classes you want from Cassie, so that we can definitely work on it. And the more comments we receive, the more we definitely will appreciate that. Awesome. So speaking of, time for Q&A. Let me just go ahead and because there were definitely a lot and I just grouped them.
Perfect. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Let's talk about first the nature of acrylic, because I think we've got a couple of people asking about the nature of acrylic, from Bev and Sure for from Bev Barons first. So with watercolor you can re-wet, right, and reuse it. In acrylic, is it the same case?
Great question. Great question. And you are a little bit ahead of the game. We're going to talk about glazing, which is a technique we will talk about in class 2, 3, and 4. But I will say to a certain degree, acrylic can be reactivated. However, there's a little bit of an asterisk. A lot of times once acrylic has dried, very dry, by adding in water, you can pick up that color, but sometimes it will be patchy. So it will not be the most pretty, when you reactivate watercolor, it's like nothing happened. Like time has froze and this color is still the same as it was like 6 months ago. Whereas acrylic, it will be very sparse, very patchy. A lot of times it flakes. So I would say if it's dry, don't bother. Try to remix the color as close as possible. However, if it's like been 45 minutes, you can add in a little water to your brush, try to reactivate it as best as possible, but you might have to remix some of the volume back into it. It might be really thin and just kind of flat. You might have to add some more colors to it after, but I would try to stay away from it as best as possible and just really try to strengthen those color matching skills.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Which is pretty much connected with Sher's question. What happens when you add more water to paint? I guess the glazing can add.
Y'all are getting ahead of me. Y'all are too smart. So we're going to talk about it. I'll give a little snippet right now just to answer your questions, so you're not like Cassie's the worst teacher ever. Basically, when you add water to acrylic, you're going to thin down the paint consistency to a watercolor wash, so a very translucent watercolor type feel. The more water you add, as we know, the lighter the color is going to get. And the same happens with acrylic. It's called glazing. So glazing works really well for adding in color, adding in shadow, adding in effects like a mist or a fog to your painting. If it's like over an ocean with a boat, things like that, the applications are perfect. Again, we'll talk about it more in depth, obviously, in our next upcoming classes, but that's a little sneak peek that there's a myth, there's a common misconception that if you water down acrylic, you're ruining the paint. For years, I painted not using water at all until I finally said, you know what, I'm going to try it. Like, what's the worst that happens? It's actually a really cool effect and a really cool technique. So never be afraid to add water. It's not a myth, it is a myth that you can't. Totally misconception. So very good question.
And I'll be dropping the link to the whole recording page for the class. So if anybody's interested, you definitely could check it out. You can look. There we go. You can check out the link that I've posted in the chat on YouTube. All right, let me just go ahead and proceed with the next set of questions, which I have lost apparently. There we go. Let's see. We are going to be talking about. Okay, so let's talk about differences between acrylic and other mediums.
Okay.
Sure has this wonderful question. How do inks, watercolor, and acrylics compare in allergic and toxins? Do you have any ideas? Yeah.
So inks, watercolor, and acrylic for
Acrylics.
toxicity? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, very good question. I'm really glad that you asked. Now, I work with a brand, Grumbacher, who does the Academy Acrylic series. Those are non-toxic. So right on, and I have one here that I'll show you. Right on the container, where are we here? My paints are very well loved, so excuse me, this one's going to look terrible. I don't know if you can see, but right on there it has the label that it conforms to the art, safeties, etc. But right there it says non-toxic. It's very hard to see, but it says non-toxic, believe me. Right on the bottom there. And when I was first diving into acrylic, that was my concern as well. I have some sensitivities in my family, so I had to make sure that I was using a material that wasn't going to cause any issues. And Grumbacher was amazing, and they actually have a materials list available. I just did a quick Google search, and it actually shows the sort of things that are in their paint. If people had any sort of adverse reactions, so itchy eyes, runny nose, allergies, etc., and they had none listed for everything. So I'm very confident using this brand. You can always tell, I find personally, a great quality acrylic by the smell. You will always notice that if an acrylic paint, and I'll say the price, if the price of the acrylic is too good to be true, you open up the tube and it reeks. Trust me, it will stink. It's a very full, chocked full of additives, all the crap that you don't want in your paint. That's when you'll start to notice, or the paint has gone off. My acrylic, unless I'm using a vast amount, like huge piles of acrylic, I can barely smell them at all. So during my sessions, I don't smell anything. They're very, very easy to use. No adverse reactions, etc. I would say all mediums, it's chemicals, it's pigments and it's chemicals. So whether it's ink, you know how you get like Sharpie markers, you can just that smell. All of those materials are going to have some sort of chemical within them. But for me, in my experience, acrylic is the best non-toxic option for wet media, meaning like in comparison to oils. Watercolor, I'd imagine the same thing. I'm not as well versed, but I know with watercolor, the set that I have is all natural pigments in the colors themselves. And then that's how the paints are made. So I would always say, do your research, check online if they have a materials list where they show you what is in the paint and if there's been any reactions, etc., and then go from there. But for me, a good quality acrylic with good ventilation, you should have no problem at all. I always recommend, even if it's watercolor, I have the window open or my fan or my purifier on just to be safe. We're using chemicals to create beautiful things, and we want to make sure that we're safe. So hopefully that answers the question. But I would say, especially like I know from experience, Grumbacher Academy Acrylic, one of the safest options, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And we got a quick question from Bev.
Sure.
Grumbacher. Thank you so much, Linda, for answering that. All right, let's proceed with the other question. Gosh, you've got a lot. I just realized there's a lot.
That's okay.
We're enjoying this, apparently.
Perfect.
So Ralph has a question. Do the acrylic paints work as well on, I think this is brasswood panel? Not basswood. That was a typo, but I think that was brasswood panel.
Okay, yeah. So I'll talk about wooden panel in general. Acrylic works well on wood. I've seen people paint on antlers. I've seen wooden panels, chipboard, etc. You can pretty much apply acrylic to anything. The only experience I have really with acrylic on wood is that I made some wooden ornaments. I find that the wood really soaks up that paint, and you need a lot more unless you coat it in like a gesso or a primer. I find that the paint really gets soaked into that surface and it doesn't tend to blend as well. Wet on wet is a lot harder. It just is like, and then it's gone and it's dry. So I would definitely say if you are planning to work on any wood panel or wood product, either prime it or just be prepared to use a little bit more extra paint as it will dry out very quickly and it's much harder to mix on the actual item itself. You're going to have to do a lot of palette mixing and color sort of matching and more volume and quantity of paint than let's say if you're painting on a canvas, I would say. Great question.
I was about to talk. I realized I muted it again.
All good.
Okay, awesome. So that answers the question. Next question we've got from James. Is there a medium for thinning watercolor paint?
There are a lot of different mediums for acrylic. There's slow drying mediums. There are like a mixing white. I have a tube of mixing white that actually bulks up the quantity of the paint. There are a lot of different options for mediums, slow drying. You can thin them out, etc. So those will be in the acrylic section of an art store, usually kind of around the varnish, or you can find them online. But yes, I would definitely take a look, see what's available. If you're finding that it dries too quickly or you want to work like a little bit thinner, etc., definitely take a look, see what's available in your budget, and then you can go ahead and add that to your art kit. But there are endless possibilities. There's pretty much something for everything. So yes,
Right.
definitely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
And we're really delving into the world of acrylics here.
Perfect.
Okay. This one's really easy to answer, I believe. Jean shares, I want a set of long-handled brushes on Instagram, but all of the information is in Asian script, so I don't know what the sizes are or what the bristles are. It's mostly flat and filbert. What size of round brush do you recommend? I guess for beginners.
Oh, excellent. Yes. So normally my scale, and again, it all depends on what size you're going to work on your canvas or your canvas panel. I work upwards to about, let's say, a 14 by 18 size canvas. That's about as big as I paint. I just don't paint any longer or larger. So I would say my range is a 000, which is going to be the teeny tiny little, almost like spot brush, very, very small, good for like little catch lights and things, high detail work. So a 000 is going to be the smallest round that I have available. It'll go 000. I'm sorry if I'm like looking off. I'm like thinking back to my brush kit. 000, a 00, a single zero. So as those zeros get bigger, I know that sounds weird, the single is going to be the largest single zero. So the larger small round, if that makes sense. So triple, double, single. And then I have a 2, a 4, and a 6. So that's as high as I go. There's 8, 10, 12. Like they're getting very quite large. But I find those sizes are really versatile, allow you to do a lot of different size canvas work, whether it's really small or kind of medium size. If you're looking to do like large, 30 by whatever canvas, you're going to need something much larger. But I would say for most beginners, those would be the sizes. So triple, double, single, 2, 4, 6 would be what I would recommend. Maybe an 8, depending. But that's what I would recommend. And you can get those in kits. You can get them in singles, whatever you prefer.
Right. I think, yeah, you definitely can save up with those budget sets.
Yes.
I believe.
Yes.
For sure. Awesome. All right. Let's go ahead with colors. From YouTube, we've got, what are the favorite reds you like you like to use for mixing? And Jean from the website says, PDF doesn't say what colors to have. Should we have just a red, yellow, and blue plus white and black, or are there other colors we should have? So
okay, excellent question. I have actually my kit down here actually, so I'm going to disappear for a quick second. These are the reds that I use in my art kit. So we'll tackle the red first. I use cadmium red medium hue for 90% of the reds that I use in my paintings. I find that it's a nice middle tone. It's not too light. It's not too dark. It's in the middle. And for me, it's just a really nice, bright, vibrant red. Sometimes reds can be a little dull. This one, the medium hue, is my favorite. However, I do have a light hue as well. So with the cadmium reds, there are different variations. The light is much more, I find, soft, bright red, more of like a highlight. So if I was painting a cardinal, I would do the vast majority of the red in the medium, and then I would come in with the red light for those bright red highlights with a little bit of white, if that makes sense. So those two are my favorite, and I hope that helps you. In terms of the art kit, what you need available, my favorite shades, colors, and that I use for everything are as follows. So let me see if I can get this right. I have titanium white, which is going to be my white. I have Mars black. Those are going to be staples for every painting. Most important, in my opinion. I have my cadmium red. I have my cadmium yellow. Both of those are medium hues, and you just saw the light. So red, yellow. We've got our blue. Phthalo blue is the one that I use. There's all kinds of different blues out there. I like phthalo, kind of the middle of the road, very simple blue color. So we have our white, black, red, yellow, blue. I have burnt sienna, which is going to be the color that I used in the demo, matching those two browns together. Burnt sienna, burnt umber, which is a much cooler, darker blue, very similar to like a walnutty type color, burnt umber, and that's it. So those are going to be the only ones that I use. I mix everything else myself. So, you know, my greens, everything, my grays. I don't think you need those tubes. If you want them, if they came in the kit, you can use them. But really, that's pretty much it, what I use for my kit. So
Awesome. So most of the primaries and then black and white, you're definitely right with that, Jean.
yes.
Thank you so much. Alrighty. We're gonna go ahead and go to the medium itself. Going back to the medium.
Sure.
Bev and Sure, you guys are making such a great tandem when making questions. So Bev was asking, I know Cassie covered this, but can't remember, is she using glossy or matte paint? To which Sure, I think Sure's question is related. Will you cover gel medium use in another class?
Gotcha. Okay. My acrylic is much more, I find, on the glossy side. It's not incredibly glossy, but there is a little bit of a shine and reflection to it, especially when you're taking pictures of it. So the Grumbacher Academy is more on the gloss. There are matte variations of all types of brands of acrylic as well. Or you can change the finish, as we mentioned, with varnish. So that's totally up to you, but mine is a little bit more glossy. I find most acrylic paints are glossy, and then there's like specialty ones that are matte. So just keep that in mind. Either or will do the job. Whatever you have available truly is going to be perfect for this course. So no problems there. And as for the mediums, I don't truly use a lot of mediums in my style of acrylic painting. I do talk about them on occasion throughout, but it's not something that I really heavily cover. I tend to leave that to you to experiment. Since I don't really use them, I feel as though I would not be a good advocate for them in the proper placement and usage. So I would definitely say if it's something that you find will help you, you know, take a look, see what they have available and what will be tailored to your needs, whether you need like a slow drying or we were talking about thinning earlier, and then just practice and experiment with those. I'm more than happy to answer your questions throughout. If you say, you know, hey, Cassie, can I use my slow drying here? Or can I apply this here? I'm more than happy to help you. But as a whole, we don't cover it too much in the course so far. Yes.
Awesome. And I'm flashing Cassie's Instagram handle in case you do have direct questions which you want to ask her and you're too shy. People in the YouTube might be a little too shy as compared to the website people.
No worries.
No problem.
I'm a message away.
Yeah, exactly. So you definitely can shoot your message or direct your messages to Cassie. There we go. All right. So let's move forward to layering with acrylics.
Yeah.
So James is asking, do you create ink drawings and then fill it with acrylic like watercolor painting?
Very good question. I would say you absolutely can if you like more of a guide when you are painting. Again, acrylic is very versatile. So if you wanted to have a pencil sketch and then the ink line art on top and then fill it in, I like to consider them like a coloring book. You are more than welcome to. Whatever works for you. Some artists may like to do just the layering as is. Some artists want more of a guide. So they are very versatile. Whatever you want to do, you absolutely can. Yes, 2 thumbs up for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And to which I think this second question is related. Johanna on YouTube is asking, what do you do when you lose the lines you've drawn as you paint?
We guess. That's the best answer and funniest answer I can give. In all seriousness, I guess. I will do my best to have an outline. I talk a lot about in some of my YouTube videos as well of painting in an outline with black paint first. So let's say we have a lion portrait and we want to make sure, you know, we outline the nose, the eyes, maybe the tips of the ears, the very important areas that I don't want to lose sight of. And I will do that black outline first. And then from there, I will go ahead and layer in a very soft wash and then come in with the opaque colors as well. We'll talk about this more in the course, but as a little kind of appetizer, I basically just try my best. I really keep a reference handy of, my reference. I use the grid method a lot, which is an option to make sure that your sketch is done properly and anatomically correct. By having those little sort of grids on there helps you find your location. Some artists will use like a light projector. Some artists will just go for it and see what happens. But worst case, if you go a little wayward away from your original sketch and you're lost, you can cover over any mistakes with acrylic. It's very versatile, and that's an option as well. But to say, I guess, is the honest truth. I just hope for the best.
That's very honest and
Yeah.
absolutely true. No, that's totally true. And I guess that's where the fun part for acrylic comes.
Yes. And frustrating at times, yes.
Okay, I choose to stick with the fun then.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. We are down to the last two questions, which is from the same person, Judy.
Yep.
If you want a purple, which color do you recommend? And do you also recommend mixing white?
Okay. So purple, you can buy purple in a tube. So purple is a very difficult color to mix. I'll be very honest with you. It's either too red or it goes too blue. It's very hard to get right in the middle. So you can get purple tubes like from the manufacturer that are this bright, beautiful purple. If you find that mixing the purple on your own is very frustrating and it's a source of stress for you, buy a purple tube. I would just go out and buy one, and that way you have one available to you. I usually just try my best and mix my red and my blues together, and I use a little bit of white to see the color. So if you think back to our color chart when we were doing our little color triangle, the purple is very hard to see. It looks very muddy. If we were to add white to that, that purple really starts to shine through. And then we can add more red and blue as we see fit to adjust and change the sort of warm or coolness to the purple, because there will be varying warm and cool purples as well. Some that are very cool and dark, and then some of that are more warm, cranberry, wine-ish type colors too. So if it's a source of stress, go out and buy a tube. I would say don't even bother. Just get one, especially if you're painting stuff that's a lot of purple or a big easel that's a lot of space. Go out and get a purple tube. As for mixing white, I do have a tube of mixing white that I use, especially for larger paintings. I use it for, let's say we're building a background and it's a pet portrait. The client wants a bright green background. I can add mixing white to that, so I don't have to use as much as my blue and my yellow. And it kind of bulks up the volume of the paint that I have available, and it spreads it further. It allows me to get more green on my background, and it just builds up that volume. So I definitely recommend mixing white as you learn to love the medium. It is not something that you need right off the hop where you're a beginner, you're just buying your kit, I have to get mixing white. You don't. It's just as you learn to love the medium, which I hope that you do, you may want to add that into your kit to make it easier, but definitely not a necessity for sure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All righty. And I think that wraps up most of the questions that we've got. That was a lot, you guys.
It was a lot. It was great. I loved it. I'm very happy.
Exactly. And most of the questions you guys asked are pretty much related to some of the course or classes that Cassy will be doing for the whole course. And I just pretty much flooded the chat, YouTube chat, with links, and I hope you guys would use that as reference. So there's Cassy's Instagram. If you followed along today, go ahead and tag at Cassydraws.art on Instagram, or and at Etcher_studio, so we can see your works. If you did your homework for today, we also have a private Facebook group dedicated for this course only. So if you've purchased this class and you're not yet part of that Facebook group, make sure you are part of that group. I'm going to be looking for that link. Hold on. And then I'll just definitely hold on, let me just go ahead. There we go. I'm dropping the link in the chat so that you guys can join if you've purchased this course, so that you won't miss out on anything, because like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be having open studio sessions every week where you can join in on. This is pretty much like a chill Zoom session. We're going to be talking about your pain points, the challenges you encountered, what was the easiest part, what was the fun part, those kinds of stuff. And then you can interact and gather ideas as well from others. Um, Awesome. And then I also dropped the link for Cassie's podcast here. The podcast interview with Cassy, rather, so that you can listen to it while you're doing your homework, which is pretty much a good idea. And then you can learn more about the whole course in the YouTube description below, or I also dropped the link here on the chat. And it's a great way for you guys to support Cassy over here, which does amazing work, as you just saw earlier. um, Let me see. No more questions. Any comments or other insights you guys have, please drop in a comment. We've got a follow-up question from Judy. Would dioxazine purple be a good choice?
Yes. That's what I was. Listen, when I told you pick up a purple tube, dioxazine, hopefully I said that right, came up, but I'm like, oh darn, I'm going to butcher that and not say it right. So yes, you found the purple I was thinking of. We're twinning. You read my mind. That would be the recommend. Yes.
Gotcha. Amazing. Thank you so much. Alrighty then. Well, if that would be all, I guess. Thank you, Cassy, says Linda. I think we've got some awesome comments as well earlier. Thank you. You answered my question. Let me just go ahead and go back to some of the. You guys have filled the chat. Wow. Oh, I think I missed a question. I'm so sorry, Deborah. How often do you change your water? Good question.
Not enough. So I would definitely say I do not change my water enough. I would say when it starts to not be see-through, I would change it. I admittedly wait way too long. I am lazy. I will be very honest with you guys. I'm lazy. I'm a lazy painter, and it's a bad habit. So I would say as soon as it starts to go not translucent and it becomes really opaque and muddy and you can't see through it, dump it and put some more water in. That will transfer to your paints, whether we realize it or not. It will kind of taint those colors. So very similar to watercolor. It's the exact same. I definitely would change it as often as possible and be better at it than I am.
There we go. Alrighty, we are having a couple of thank yous from people in the website. Brilliant class. Thank you so much. Thank you. Great session. There we go. We've got a lot of thank yous already. Awesome. Okay. Cleopatra has a great insight. Magenta and Clan is the best for purples. It pays to be done with magenta, not red. Thank you so much for your insight.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of twos. There's no way I can't pronounce that.
No, perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cleopatra. I like your name, but let us know next time if you want to join in this course. Let us know how you'd like to be addressed. Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassy. Looking forward to the next one, says Deborah. Awesome. Alrighty. And for those people, again, in the YouTube, make sure you check out the full course. The link that I sent, which I'm going to be dropping again in the chat, has everything you need, and it talks about a little... well, you can see all the information which Cassy will discuss for each class. It's, again, 4 classes and a live feedback session at the end. Live feedback session would be the best, you guys. You guys have the opportunity to submit your work.
I'm very much so looking forward to it. Very much so.
Awesome. But you guys would first have to do your homework and be good students before you can attend the live feedback session.
True.
This is kind of like a class, isn't it?
It really is. I would not be a good teacher if I didn't have homework. Let's be real, right?
For sure. Oh my gosh. Well, and by the way, you guys, for those who have been familiar with the Facebook groups, you don't necessarily need to complete the homework before you attend the Open Studio session. So there's no pressure in that. You can certainly attend the Open Studio sessions, just check in on everybody, or we can even do the homework together if you'd like. So awesome. Brilliant. Thank you. Awesome. Alrighty then. Well, I think that's pretty much it. So any final thoughts, Cassy, before we close the session?
Yeah, I would just like to thank you guys for being here. Thank you so much for giving acrylic a try, especially if you're a beginner. I really appreciate it. And just remember throughout this session or this course, just remember you're going to make mistakes. You are going to be at times frustrated, at times very proud and happy. It is a natural thing when learning something new. And I just want you to have fun. And I'm there every step of the way. So please do not be shy. Ask a question, even if you think that it is a dumb question or I should know this question. Please ask. I am more than happy to help. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. And I thrive off of that. So don't be shy, ask away. And just once again, thank you so much. And to Kathleen as well for being a fantastic hostess. Thank you so much. Can we all get some love in chat, please, for Kathleen? She's amazing. And the Etcher team, y'all. The Etcher team, 12 out of 10. Love you guys, and you guys are amazing. So some love would be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Cassie, and you deserve all the love as well. And thank you so much, everybody, for sticking with us till the end. And until next time, make more art, everybody. Bye for now.